Hey everyone, so this is the season finale for Elementary, episode 24, season 5, called Hurt Me, Hurt You. So, I think I'm just gonna go the chronological order since there was a, um, there was a main storyline, but it pretty much intersected completely with last episode. So, I'm just gonna go chronologically. I'm not gonna go by main storyline and then sort of B storyline. So basically, starts off with Sherlock memorizing items he had wrapped in a box, wrapping around the box, um, and this is when Joan comes in and she's asking if he's using again because of how he has been acting the last couple weeks, including before Shinwell even died. And then it cuts to SBK celebrating one of their own getting out of prison. Though one of them, I think his name, we find out later, is what is his name? Dwayne Pryor. I believe his name is Dwayne Pryor that we find out later. So he's concerned because they are celebrating when Bonzi is in the hospital, and he's concerned about the facts. He's just concerned that they're celebrating out in the open like this, so soon after someone that is supposed to be their leader is pretty much down and out. And he also says to the person that he's been talking to that Bonzi that Tallboy gave his lawyer some information, and the information was that Joan is the one who turned Shinwell into a snitch. Um, and then it looks and sounds like they have a plan on taking Joan out when three people, presumably gang members, and presumably from another gang, walk up with machine guns and shoot into the crowd. Then find out that an SPK lieutenant named, going by the nickname Socks, and Dwayne Pryor, along with some of their associates, were all killed. It's assumed that Mara Trace, a rival gang of SBK, did this based on eyewitnesses. Gregson then wants to talk to Tyus to get him to, understand that the best thing is to not have any retaliation going on. Sherlock then says he wants to talk to Julio Zelaya, aka Hal Cohn, who is the leader of Mara Trace. So they both do that separately. You first see Sherlock going to a church and confronting a priest about letting Mara Trace use his church to launder money. And he wants the priest to give Hal Cohn a message to not, and his message is to not set the sights on SBK because Sherlock and Joan have set their eyes on them first. Joan and Gregson then go to Tyus. He's still saying that he isn't the head of SBK, but they aren't buying it. But they're like, there's no need to be retaliation because a street war isn't necessary. Sherlock then comes home to May being in the house. And she says she found the mystery boxes downstairs and that whatever this is between them isn't working, or won't work. She then wants to know why he hadn't told Joan about her, to which he answers there was really no need for that. So May is like, well, it's the last chance to work things out. And it was at this point that I was thinking she was a figment of his imagination, because I was like, how is it that she all of a sudden just showed up in his house without, like, just sh- showed up in his house? I mean, you'd think that if she was a real person, they'd show her, um, they would show her trying to break into the house, but they didn't. So that's why I'm thinking she's a figment of his imagination. Um, and then there's a knock at the door, and it's two Chase members who then say how Cone got his message and that he wants to see Sherlock. So they bring him to an auto body shop. And once there, how Cone says that, well, yes, they committed the act of retaliation. It wasn't like this. Their act is what started it all. What started it all, and thus Mara Chase's retaliation is that Halcone has a sister named Carmen who was killed, and before she was killed, she was videotaped being beaten and told to, or what seemed to be her being beaten, and told to say certain things, which we'll find out in a second. And apparently she was found in front of a lawyer who does real estate business for some of the real estate business for them, so that they can have places so that they can do whatever they want to do legally. And so he says, because she was innocent, he wants to see every last one of SKP dead, and for Sherlock to stay out of his way. So the next thing we know, we're back at the station, and Joan, Sherlock, Gregson, and Marcus are watching the DVD that of Carmen, and on it she is saying she's saying, well, I have a message for my brother. He disrespected SBK for years by going to places where they told him not to, and took what they consider is theirs. So he will have something taken from him, which is Carmen. Gregson then wants to, go pick them up, but Shark's like, well, they're long gone. So there's not really any way to get in touch with him. So Joan then's like, well, why would they start a war when they're weaker at the moment and than they have ever been before, and with a gang as powerful as Mara Chase? And why would they hold a party the night before in such a public place where they could be easily ambushed if they truly committed the act of killing Carmen? Gregson's not really buying it for a second, but Sherlock's like, well, no, Joan's right. And SBK is being framed. It could be a rival gang wanting to pit the two against each other, or it could be a faction of either gang. So they bring Tyus back in, and once again he's like, I am not a gangbanger. I've never been one. And I don't have any plans to be one, and all that stuff. And this is where I was like, Gregson, yes, tell it like it is, boy. I was like, because he said, if we double break the promise and not arrest your ass, will you finally start talking like a fucking man to us? And I was like, boy, if you don't, like, he was me and them. I was like, boy, if you don't stop with this bullshit and like get it the fuck together, like, I was like, boy, oh yes, he was everything in that moment. I was happy. I was there for it. I was like, boy, what the fuck, like, how, like, come on now. So anyway, so Tyus then starts talking. Bonzi had come to Tyus 10 years before this, wanting to know if he was in over his head. And at that point, Bonzi was, head of the gang for a couple years. And so Tyus gave Bonzi some business advice, which worked. And soon enough, Bonzi started coming to him more and more for advice. Eventually, Tyus said they could have a partnership where he gives him advice, but has to be on certain rules. And one of those rules was to never mess with Halcon Zelaya. Sherlock then says, well, the two gangs have had skirmishes, but Tyus is like, well, that was just part of business being in a gang. And he's like, well, they would never have won against that kind of crazy Mara Trace is known for, and never would have signed off on hurting or killing his sister. So I'm like, Tyus is wondering if Carmen being killed was done by like a so-called friend, meaning inside his own gang. I mean, because there's been rumblings, but it's just that rumblings and all that stuff about certain things. So he gets up and offers to talk to his voice about this, and on his way out, he asks if Halcon knows about Tyus being one of the leaders, to which Sherlock's like, no. So then Joan, while this whole thing is going on, Joan goes to Carmen's place and speaks with her roommate Tanya, who pretty much is lying about knowing when Carmen was dead based on the fact that she has red puffy eyes, but she doesn't have any more tissues in sight. So she's like, well, I can't talk or she'll be hurt by Mara Trace. Joan's like, well, girl, Carmen's brother runs the gang, so what the fuck? Because I was thinking the same thing, I was like, but you do know that Carmen's brother runs the gang, don't you? Because I was like, why the fuck would he hurt your ass? Like, it made no sense. I was like, it made no sense. But then Tanya's like, well, how come wants to solve Carmen's murder his own way? But she eventually comes clean and says 3 nights ago when Carmen was taken, a guy wearing a mask came up and grabbed Carmen. And Tanya told this to Halcon, or she was told to tell Halcon to wait for a response. Tanya said it didn't make sense another gang was behind it because due to the fact that she grew up in Spanish Harlem, she knew what a gangbanger looked like, sounded like, and knew how they moved, and all that stuff. And so she's like, the person who took Carmen didn't move or sound like a gangbanger. So while the guy was dressed like a gangbanger, he didn't fit this what a typical gangbanger looked like. And because he didn't have tattoos on his body, on his arms or anything, and he just didn't look comfortable holding the gun that he had. So back at the house, Sherlock tells Joan Tyus thinks it's a rogue member. Joan fills him in about what Tanya told her, and then she brings up the memorial service for Shinwell. But Sherlock doesn't think it's a good idea. And somewhere along the line, either at this moment or a little bit later, he agrees to go to the memorial service with her. Gregson then calls and says Tyus found a rogue member SVK. And he didn't just give one name, he's selling out his whole gang. So when Sherlock and Joan get to the precinct, we find out they find out, along with the viewers, find out that Tyus came in for a few hours before and was willing to give names of everyone in the gang who committed a crime for SVK only if he gets immunity from what he has done, basically. And this will prevent a gang war between the two gangs. Tyus says Dwayne Pryor killed Carmen because Mara Trace killed his brother back in 2006, and held a grudge ever since. But Joan doesn't believe Dwayne killed Carmen because she remembers seeing him once before, when she was with Shinwell, and saw that he had tattoos on his arms and thinks Tyus killed Carmen. But she didn't say this in front of Gregson. She tells us to Sherlock. So when they tell this to the ADA, he doesn't buy it. And Joan calls him on the fact that if there wasn't a gang war, if it weren't for the fact that there was a gang war going on, they wouldn't be giving Tyus immunity whatsoever. Joan then tells him that Sherlock just played a recording of Tyus' voice for Tanya, and she positively identified him as the man who took Carmen. The ADA then says he won't allow them to lean on Tyus because he's already gave a name of who killed Carmen. Dwayne. So, Joan thinks the minute he goes into protection, Tyus will use his money, the money that he has overseas, to get rid of to flee his protection, and then flee possibly even the country. Joan then leaves to go to Shinwell's memorial, and upon seeing no one there, she gets a call from Tyus, who gloats to her. He's like, well, before Shinwell went to prison, he was eager, handy with a gun, but also not one to move it quickly within the ranks of SBK, if at all. Then the moment Shinwell gets out of prison, he's all hot to get up through the ladder, like get up on the ranks of the ladder. So Tyus got suspicious, and looked through his phone. He noticed Joan's number under the name Doc, and when her number was on his speed dial, and when she revealed that she worked as a consultant for the police, and gave him her card or whatever, he found out that the numbers were the same. I mean, he's pretty much gloating to the fact that he killed Shinwell. We then see Sherlock trying to memorize what's in a packaged box again, but he doesn't get everything right. And that's when Sherlock goes to talk with Joan, and she's like, "Where were you?" And he was saying, "Oh well, I was busy talking with whoever this afternoon." He's like, "Well, that's not what I meant. What I meant was, where were you for Shinwell's service?" And he comes with the excuse of, "Oh, well, I lost track of time." She storms out. He follows, and she tells him that whatever excuse that he is about to give isn't good enough, and hasn't been for the past few weeks. He says the true source of her anger is the fact that Tyus is going to get away with murder, that Shinwell was gonna get away with it as well, and the difference between Tyus and Shinwell is that Shinwell was an idiot, well, Tyus was not. Joan then gets fed up with him and shows Sherlock the confession that Shinwell wrote about confessing to Jamil's murder, and then leaves the house. She meets up with Halcone, and she tells him that she knows who killed her sister, but he's in protective custody because he's serving as a witness in a high-profile case. And she says, "Oh, while he can't go get to him, she can, but she needs his help." And she needs him to give her Carmen, so because if he's smart, he'll wait when Tyus doesn't have any protection, and he's just another convict in prison where Halcone knows people. Halcone then wonders if she has any concern about that, and she says not tonight. She doesn't, because she's not gonna be bothered by the fact that Tyus is gonna die at the hands of Halcone, because to be honest, he does deserve it. Not saying it's right, but in her mind, he deserves it, which he does. But I don't think that. I think she's gonna regret doing that, honestly, in the long run. To be honest, that's just my opinion. And she might even get in a little bit of trouble because of that next season. I think they have. They've been renewed for 6th season. I think I saw. I think I saw on Facebook that they were renewed for a 6th season. Now I'm kind of getting off topic here for a second, but Yeah, they got renewed for 6th season on May 13th. I knew I saw that somewhere. But anyway, so yeah, I think this is kind of like a little early prediction here, but I think what's gonna happen next season is that because she made this deal with Halcone, she's gonna end up getting in a little trouble because of it. I'm not sure how big a trouble, but I think it's gonna be big enough to it might be big enough to the point where is she is she is almost fired because of it and not able to work as detective. That's a possibility. I think that's a strong possibility if she ends up getting caught having made this deal with Halcone. But so that's a little early prediction. So anyway, Sherlock is then reading Chenille's confession when he gets a phone call from May. Apparently, he then wants someone. He's like, I want someone to talk to, but she's like, it's too late for that. And this is when he reveals that he realized that he actually did send a text to Perkins, that day, the day before he went to Bronxville, but simply forgot, he completely forgotten about it. Then the room May is sitting in goes up in flames, and it turns out she's supposedly sitting downstairs, and this is sitting downstairs in the basement, or in another room or whatever. And this is where I was also thinking that she can't be real, and is only a figment of his imagination. And it's kind of it's pretty much confirmed later on in the episode, at the end of the episode. But before we get to that, they bring Tyus in and tell him and his lawyer that there was a jump cut in the middle of video, the video made of Carmen. The jump cut is where she had wriggled free of her restraints and bit whoever took her over. Because initially they thought that whoever held her had hit her and split her lip, but that wasn't the case. What had happened was she wriggled free, and whoever took her had to stop the tape, and when he had stopped the tape to re-tie her up, she bit him in the arm shoulder region, and had gotten some blood on her lip that kind of trickled down her lip a little bit. The reason why they know that is because they got an anonymous tip about where to find her body, and noticed that, and even though her body had decomposed for a couple days, they noticed that her lip, like her bottom lip, was never split open by the guy or person who took her. And even though the blood that had gone down her throat, a good portion of the blood that had went down her throat was destroyed by bleach, there was still enough blood that was able to be compared to someone else in her esophagus. So they tested the blood in her throat, and while Tyus would have immunity for the crimes he had other SUK members doing along with the ones he committed against his brother, he wouldn't have immunity for the crimes that he committed that weren't related to SBK activity, aka Carmen's murder. And he perjured himself by saying Dwayne Pryor killed Carmen, which ultimately voids his immunity. So they pretty much have Tyus dead to rights and going to prison. So one of the last scenes of the was kind of the last, I guess you could say the last two scenes. One is Sherlock sitting in a doctor's waiting room when May walks in, having no burn marks on her, because if she was truly surrounded in a burning room, she would have burning marks on her, and she had none. She literally had none. So that right there was one way that confirmed to me that she was just a figment of his imagination. The other was it kind of the scene where Sherlock was in the waiting room kind of cut between that and Joan going back to the house and seeing the one of the room door that Sherlock threw a chair through, um, and all that, and the room itself was completely intact with no scorch marks or fire, like flame marks on the walls or anything like that. So that was also a indication to me that she's just a figment of of his imagination. Um, and while he's sitting there talking with May, he's like, "Why do you look like my mother?" Um, and it made me realize that we never really did see what his mother looked like. We know what his father looks like because we've seen him on multiple episodes last season. Um, and we know what his brother looks like because we've seen him before season 4, and seen what he looked like before he went to Witsec. Um, so, but we've never actually seen what his mother looks like. I don't remember ever seeing what his mother looks like ever in this entire show series. So, um, yeah, I love to see where this goes, and I would love to explore more of, um, Sherlock's mother, and her dynamic within the family because it I would love to see her and her character and how her character interacted with all three men, the father, Sherlock's brother, and Sherlock himself. Because I don't quite remember exactly like what happened to his mother, so I'll have to look that up and see, refresh my memory of what exactly happened to his mother. But because I think she killed herself. I think she did. I think that's what happened, is that she killed herself, but I don't remember because it was so long ago that they had brought that up that it just don't really, I just don't remember exactly everything that happened with her. But yeah, so anyway, so then kind of kind of went on a tangent there for a second, but the last thing we see is him going in for either a CAT or CT scan. I think it's a CT scan. I think CT scan is the taking a picture of the brain, and I think that's what he went in for, is a CT scan. And so that's pretty much the entire episode. Now I have a prediction for Sherlock. I think what's going on, obviously, because I mean, either it's, to me, it's like one of two things. Either it's a disease similar to not Alzheimer's. Either, no. It's either a disease similar to schizophrenia, or it's a brain tumor that's pressing on a part of his brain that controls auditory and the auditory and visual centers of his brain. And I think it, to me, it seems more of the latter, because he's specifically hallucinating about his mother, and and you'd think that he'd be hallucinating about a lot of other things, not just his mother. So, I think it's a brain tumor, and he's hallucinating about his mother because he has unresolved things going on with his mom. Sorry about the phone ringing there. Um, that's just the toll collector. Sorry, I didn't see it. Um, or toll free number or whatever it was. But anyway, so I think it's just pressing on the brain tumor is pressing on a on the auditory and visual part of his brain, and I think part of the brain that controls memory function as well, because he's forgetting things as well. He's not because he's also forgetting things. He's not just hallucinating about his mom. So yeah, I think I definitely want to see where this goes, where this whole storyline goes, and how and I'm thinking they might bring in a a secondary character to help Joan solve cases, to pick up the slack for Sherlock, because he's gonna go undergo like chemotherapy and radiation, and so he's not gonna be like up to his usual self. So I think they're gonna bring in I'm thinking they're gonna bring in someone else to help fill that void, at least for half of the season, if not the majority of it or all of it. I think that's what's gonna happen. Um, and they're going to I think that's what they're gonna do for the least first half of the season, because I truly think it's gonna be a tumor, because they never really had anything like that on the series itself. So I'm looking forward to see how that plays out, and all that. So hopefully we'll get some more information soon in the next few weeks about what's gonna, like, if they're gonna bring anybody new into the series for the sixth season, and who that's gonna be, and what their character is gonna be, and all of that. Because I really do think they're gonna bring in another character next season, because they brought in Shinwell, and I mean they killed him off by the season finale. So I think they're gonna bring in another character to pretty much make him or her a permanent, him, her, or they a permanent character for at least the sixth season, if not longer than that. So I'm just really looking forward to the next season and seeing where it goes. Because well, yeah, I've been kind of, for the most part, saying that this entire season has been just okay, for the most part. I did enjoy certain episodes, and all that. So that's pretty much all I have. And like I said about Catfish, I'm not doing Catfish this week because it's just they're just talking to old catfishers, and seeing where they are now. I mean, I haven't watched it yet, but I mean, so I'm not really gonna really talk about it or anything this week, because I have no desire to revisit these catfishers. I had no desire, because I mean, they were shit for doing what they did, and I honestly don't really think half of them changed, to be honest. Some of them may have, but I don't think half of them changed, so that's why I'm not really gonna do it and talk about it. So this week, and I don't think this is gonna be the season finale, but last week was the season finale, so that's why I'm not doing it this week. But I'll see you guys next week, and I'll make a small video about future shows that I'm gonna be doing for the fall, and soon, hopefully soon, which ones I'm going to be doing, which ones I'm not going to be doing, and then I'll hopefully make that video soon, I'm hoping. So stay tuned for what I have going on soon, and I'll see you guys later.